And what's up, Utah? Welcome back to We Are the People. This is your host, Jason Preston. And excited to chat with you guys today on something very important about the GOP, the Utah Republican Party. It's been a huge issue lately. But this is an important conversation. That's some information we just found out. We're going to make this short and sweet. But before that, I am going to ask you if you are subscribed, thank you. But what we're really asking is not just you subscribe on YouTube or Rumble, but going to our website. Check it out. It's brand new. UVO just has done a phenomenal job redoing that for us, and it's amazing. Check that out and subscribe there for our newsletter, because that way we can make sure we're getting that content out to you guys. And I also want to give a huge shout out. You guys have probably noticed the content hasn't been as much lately. This is a mission trying to do this, and it is a lot of work, and it takes funds. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Jenny Shaw. Jenny, she is just a freaking amazing patriot, who's just honestly just for months and months and months been supporting us, and it's just people like Jenny. I just thank you guys, those of you who are helping us cover the cost of this, those of you who've been covering the cost of billboards. If you notice, those we're trying to keep those going. But it's a reach. And so those of you who are helping, God bless you guys. We just appreciate you more than you know. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and call in Sophie Anderson. She has dropped a massive bomb that I think is very important for you guys to, everyone to be aware of. And it's because an important conversation about what has happened to the Republican Party. So let's go ahead and call her in here.
Hello.
All right, Sophie, it's Jason Preston with We Are the People. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Jason?
Good. And our audience is glad to have you. You were, if you guys remember, she was on with her father, and he dropped an incredible show about the tunnels that are where all the trafficking, the drugs are coming to this country, and then the FBI is clearly aware of it, and so are many of our politicians. And this has been happening, and they're not doing anything to stop it. And so that was Sophie's father, so you know where she gets her love of the country from. So, Sophie, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having me. Yeah, I think we've just come off basically a coup from our very own Republican Party. Our leadership in the Republican Party has set us all up, and I think only more and more will come out about this. But May 17th was the convention, state convention, where state delegates gathered and they voted on who they wanted to lead the party, to be the GOP chair for the Republican Party of Utah. And it became very, very obvious to me, and I think anyone that was paying attention, that the establishment was throwing everything they could and had at Phil Lyman. And that led me to believe that they have to protect themselves. They're protecting something that Phil and people that want truth cannot have exposed. And so I started digging into Phil Lyman's opponent, Rob Axon, and I had heard that he was a lobbyist.
Can we pause real quick here, Sophie? I can bring in a little context. Because you talked about the establishment and their involvement, and it was not only that they were against Phil, but they were clearly. I mean, you had everybody coming out and supporting Rob Axon. And one of the interesting things that I find is you listen to talking points of Rob Axon, and the number one talking point he had, and this is relevant, was saying he was going to overturn SB 54. He's been talking about that for some time, and to our listeners, those and our viewers, I want to give a little context here, because this is very important what Sophie discovered. SB 54 is what back 11 years ago, a group of people, Gail Miller, Rob Anderson, this former CEO of he might be still CEO of Zions Bank, and several politicians, they created Count My Vote, and they're the ones that basically allowed the signature path, which would enable them to control that from that time forward, prevent the grassroots from ever upsetting what they've done. And since then, the grassroots has and the Republican Party itself has lost the ability to control its own destiny. The Republican Party cannot choose its own candidates because of SB 54. It's a very big deal. It has been a huge part of the fight, and delegates are upset because it's like, what's the point of being a delegate and spending all the time, effort, and money into a race if at the end of the day you choose someone, but because of SB 54, someone can buy their way onto the ballot. So I want to just put that background, because that is really this is a war about this bill, SB 54. And everybody in the Republican Party is saying we need to get rid of it. Well, all these politicians are behind Rob Axon. And so Sophie, now tell us what you discovered.
Okay, and I'm just going to get a teeny bit of background to add to that.
Yeah.
So like you just said, to your point, it was Gail Miller, it was Scott Anderson, it was Mike Levitt. And
Mike
in
Levitt.
my mind,
wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, he is the king of SB 54.
Okay.
And so in my mind, these people got together and they said, how do we forevermore, into eternity, control the state of Utah and have our hands on the levers of power forevermore? And they came up with SB 54. And what is the point that is most maddening to me is that former Governor Herbert, and Spencer Cox, because he was lieutenant governor then, they came to the Republicans who were desperate for help, desperate to fight SB 54. And they said, oh, yeah, we're going to help. And behind our backs, they were setting us all up to tell the court to not hear SB 54. And to me, that's traitorous actions. But anyway, I just wanted to give a little bit of that background.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So Gail Miller, like you said, she is one of the, she's the mother of SB 54, and I would say Michael is the father. And so she started with those other people, Count My Vote, okay? And I don't know if you noticed, but a few days before GOP convention, Count My Vote starts sending out polls and surveys to all the state delegates. I received one because I am a state delegate. Now, they were asking, who are you going to vote for state chair? And, it was so funny because everyone's like, Rob Axon's going to get rid of SB 54. Well, the entire problem is that Rob is supported and propped up by the very people that their survival depends on SB 54. So anyway, I decided to look into what Rob has really been up to. And Rob is a lobbyist. And there is a homeless addiction recovery program facility called The Other Side. And she said, I have no doubt that these people, their intentions are good with this facility. I really do. I think they want to help people. I have no question. That is not my argument. This is my argument. Why is Rob Axon a lobbyist for Gail Miller's The Other Side Academy? She has funded this. She has helped create it. And the very person that needed Rob Axon to become GOP chair against Phil Nyman to continue their money laundering, their power, their control, she made sure that Count My Vote did their thing for Rob Axon, sending out the polls, sending out the surveys to the state delegates to see where Rob was. Anyway, I find out that Rob is a lobbyist for this Other Side Academy, and that was very, very alarming. But the very worst part of this is that the Other Side Academy has claimed that they take no public funds. They take no taxpayer funds. They are solely funded by donations. And they said, guess how much money the state of Utah gave to the Other Side Academy in 2025?
Tell me.
$1.8 million.
Even though they claim, and obviously the Rob Axon would be the one who's lobbying for that money for them. And they claim they're not using public money, and yet they're using public money.
Yes. And I find it so very convenient that everything was thrown in Rob Axon's favor to become GOP chair. They somehow finagled a Trump endorsement that Trump has no idea who Rob Axon is. I have confirmed that. They got Mike Lee up there to prop him up disgustingly. The very person that should be helping us fight SB 54 because he used it against Bennett is now its greatest advocate. And so they threw everything they could to make sure Rob won. I don't know if you're aware that this year they've never, ever before asked for state delegates to RSVP for state convention. The GOP leadership, so that's Rob, because he is the chair, was the chair and is the chair now, they sent out an RSVP link to every state delegate and said, you have to RSVP to attend convention. Well, guess what? Only Rob and his people got the data from the people that RSVP'd. So they had access to know the delegates that were going to actually attend, and they were able to target those delegates. Phil Lyman received no data.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting because my wife's a state delegate, and she was getting calls from Burgess Owens and from several, politicians, and that's probably where that came from.
100%.
And Mike Lee had robocalls going out.
Oh, Mike Lee, Jason, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but it's becoming much, much more popular. Mike Lee is probably the most traitorous Utahn in the history of Utah. That is my opinion. And I say that unequivocally.
That is bold. Why do you say that?
Unequivocally. Jason, that man did everything in his power to make sure that Phil Lyman did not become governor. He would not speak out on the absolute fraud and corruption of Deidre Henderson and the signature fraud. And then he threw all of his political leverage behind Rob Axon. And still, even with all of that, they must be trembling because the fact that Phil only lost by 135 votes, and I'm not even sure he did lose, to be completely honest with you. His people are waking up to who Mike Lee is. All you have to do is go and look at Mike Lee's endorsement of Spencer Cox on Twitter and read those comments. I've never seen a ratio like that. Then you can go see when he endorsed Rob, and that ratio is incredible as well. And so people are really, really waking up, and it's really refreshing to see.
Yeah. No, I've had concerns with Mike Lee for a few years. I had an experience when I was running for office. I had a Green Beret who had just retired, and he was working in D.C. and he says, Jason, two things is, first off, I want you to know if you make it back there, they have a team of people, and they have one job. There's at least 10 people, and they have one job: compromise you, whether it's through girls or boys or women or money. They will find your weakness and they will own you. And he said, and then second thing he said, no one makes it more than 2 terms without being owned. Okay. And you start to look at Mike Lee when he started when he initially said he was going to run on term limits and only do one or two terms, versus Mike Lee today. And it's very clear that I see the
two
pattern.
different people.
Yeah, and you see some of the way he's voted on tech and some of the, again, when you pay close attention, you see it. The big stuff that everyone pays attention to, of course, and that's the way being compromised works. I think people think when you're compromised, all of a sudden you just go completely left. No, they say you can. This is your sandbox. You need to stay in power, so you vote the way you need to on all these areas. But when we tell you to stand up on something, or we need you, when we call your number, you obey. And I saw that with him on election integrity. After the elections were, I truly believe, stolen in 2020, Mike Lee wouldn't address it. I specifically asked him several times and asked, actually, when he wasn't there, he sent Rob Axon, and Rob Axon's response for Mike Lee was you can't unscramble an egg. And then the next time we had him and she said, what about the election issues? He says, well, what are we going to do? Well, we're Americans. We'll fix it. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We survive. And that's, Mike Lee would never call that stuff out. January 6th, you would, anyways, I don't want to speak too much about Mike Lee, but put it this way. I don't completely disagree with your statement. And I think a lot of people are starting to see that the Mike Lee of today is not the Mike Lee we elected. What was that? 11 years ago now. Too long. But as we wrap up here, any closing thoughts you have for our viewers and listeners?
I believe the entire state of Utah's GOP leadership, including many, many legislators, including Mike Schultz and Stuart Adams and Carrie Ann Lisenby, and I could name a few more, John Johnson, and Mike Levitt and Gail Miller and Scott Anderson and Rob Axon, and any of the people that chose to support Rob. I believe they instituted a coup against true Republicans of Utah and made sure that SB 54 will never be repealed. And they made sure that we will have selections instead of elections, and that Count My Vote will have their hands on the levers of power forevermore.
Yeah, look, and to our listeners, I want to thank Sophie. And one of the things I like about Sophie is where she stands. I think same thing, where I stand. I don't mince words either. But I think bottom line is, look, when the people who created SB 54 are clearly campaigning for, the current GOP chair, and the current GOP chair is apparently, from what Sophie's telling us, working for Gail Miller, the mother, as she says, of SB 54. I don't know. I just when I saw that post from you, Sophie, I was like, threw my hands up. And I was like, people have to know this, and this is why to me it's time to find a new strategy, a new pathway forward than getting all these incredible delegates back on the hamster wheel to do the same thing over and over again. Yeah. Look, Insanity is doing the same thing year after year. We have been doing that every year. Every year we get a new GOP chair that says, this year we'll fix SB 54. Come invest your time, invest your money and your efforts and trust us. And at some point we have to say, wait a minute, are we being played? And at this point, I think it's very clear we're being played. Now, the last thing I want to say before we close is this. We have some very good people who I stand by who did vote for Rob Axon. And I am not, and the fact of the matter is, I think that they believe they were making a good choice. I don't think they understood some of the stuff we're talking about today. And it's not like a lot of those people sat on the SEC, the governing body of the Republican Party, and saw that meeting after meeting Rob hijack that thing. So I want to make it clear this is not a war of us, of the people and the conservatives fighting each other, but this is a war of conservatives fighting the Utah elite. And my mission is to expose those who are against the people, those who are doing things that are not in the party's best interest, that are not in the people's best interest. And those are the people I want to call out, not the conservatives, because the conservatives, we need each other. Anyone who believes in liberty and who believes that these people, are destroying our way of life and that are trying to stand for the Constitution, we need to be banding together and not going to war with each other. This is the same war it's always been, the people versus the elite. And when it comes to the Republican Party, the fact of the matter is, there's a very powerful quote that is, what is the purpose of the Republican Party? You might ask that. And the fact of the matter is, a system is not what it claims to be, it's what it does. And it's what it consistently does. And what has the Republican Party consistently done? Kept the power in the hands of the elite. And I think it's time to wake up and realize it's time to stop giving that system more power and finding a different solution. And that's where people like you will start to think outside the box, and those ideas will come. And I think this next 2 years, we're not going to play the same game of voting harder in a system that's captured. So anyways, please give your thanks. Sophie, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter, just as Sophie Anderson, and Facebook. And Jason, I just want to say I so appreciate your tireless effort. Like, you are a treasure to Utah. So thank you.
Yeah, well, likewise, it goes right back at you. And so many of you guys, honestly, God bless all of you who are tirelessly fighting, because it is exhausting. It is hard. And I know all of us sometimes want to just, hang up our shoes and just stop because it feels hopeless. But I mean, look, this is God's fight. God wins. And thank you, Sophie, for everything you do. And to you, our listeners and viewers, God bless you guys. Thank you for everything you do. And let's just remember who wins. And anyways, thank you all. God bless you, and God bless Utah.